Hi, everybody. I know I've said it before, but today really is a big day here in American government. We're going to talk about voting, campaigns, and elections. We're going to talk about a brief history of suffrage in the United States. We're going to talk about why people vote the way they do and some of the mechanisms by which elections hold politicians accountable to the people. It's like Christmas, your birthday, and the World Cup all rolled into one video, so let's go ahead and get started. So, why do we do elections? Well, the Founding Fathers set up a representative democracy where voters would choose elected officials who would represent their interests. But how do we make sure those elected officials are doing what they're supposed to be doing? Well, Federalist Paper number 52 says it best. As it is essential to liberty that the government in general should have a common interest with the people, so it is particularly essential that the branch of it under consideration should have an immediate dependence on and an intimate sympathy with the people. Frequent elections are unquestionably the only policy by which dependence and sympathy can be effectually secured. In modern language, what that means is elections are the only way we keep politicians accountable and connected to those represent. The chance to throw the rascals out is how we prevent them from doing just basically whatever they want. This prevents what we call agency loss. The book talks about a principal-agent model, basically the idea that as a principal, a person or a set of people, hires an agent to do a specific action. In democracy, we the people are the principals, and the elected officials are our agents. We elect them to rule the country for us. However, this type of delegation raises the possibility of what is called agency loss, the idea that the agents begin to do what they want rather than serving their principals properly. This would be when elected officials vote in their interests or the interests of their donors or future employers rather than their voters. Frequent elections where the people get to throw the rascals out are supposed to prevent this. And they do so in a few different ways. They give ordinary citizens a say in who represents them. The prospect of future elections gives office holders who want to keep or improve their jobs a motive to be responsive agents. And elections provide powerful incentives for the small set of citizens who want to replace the current office holders to keep a close eye on those representatives and to provide critical evaluations of them to the public at large. People who care more about politics will help you do your work for you, make sure people are being responsive. Those can be the media, interest groups, opinion leaders, whoever. So this slide is called Expanding the Franchise. And what that means is the franchise is basically the ability to vote. When you hear about voter disenfranchisement, that means taking the right to vote away from some people. So, as you probably know, we started this nation with rich white men having the right to vote, and pretty much no one else. You had to own property to be able to vote, which means that even most white males were excluded, to say nothing of the women and black people who would be excluded well into the 19th and 20th centuries. This reflected a social reality of the time. While most adults were poor, illiterate, and dependent, you had issues with having them exercise the right to vote and perhaps the independent right to vote. At the same time, those in an advantaged position were not inclined to risk the social order, giving up their power, their wealth, etc., which helped them maintain their position at the top of society. Universal suffrage for white males was not fully achieved until the 1840s in the wake of Jacksonian democracy. This vote was not extended simultaneously, as it was left to individuals to decide whether states had the right to vote or not. But as it was extended, opposition to extending the right to vote became a political liability. As the electorate expanded, it became political suicide to oppose more democracy. Even among the elites, they began to realize that withholding the right to vote was problematic. Interestingly, though, non-voters were able to convince those who had the right to vote that it was important to extend the franchise to them. It's going to be a theme we see throughout history, and not just in terms of voting. Think about it from a self-interested perspective for a minute. For me, I would like it so only people with PhDs in political science can vote, because instead of 300 million people being eligible, we're down to, 20, 30,000, I'm not sure the number, but not that many. Even more importantly to me, instead of 800,000 people in my congressional district, we're down to, a half dozen, because not all, obviously, professors in political science at Mary Washington live in my district. So maybe a half dozen, maybe a couple more, I'm not sure. My vote suddenly becomes much more important and much more powerful. Members of Congress will respond to me, universities will get greater funding, everyone will be happy, And by everyone, I mean me and the other 5 PhDs. So why would I want to extend the right to vote to people without PhDs in political science? It's going to dilute my power and ability to control government, subsequently dilutes my ability to get favorable policy. So in history, we have seen activists make a strong, convincing moral argument, wait a long time, and hope that those in power ultimately agree to come along. As you can see, that's incredibly problematic, incredibly difficult, because I want to maintain my power as long as I can. Only when I feel like the people who don't have the right to vote can exert some sort of pressure on me in a significant way over time, am I actually going to change this policy? And that's why we see such slow change over the history of America.